So, as Tracy mentioned, this presentation is about cloud hosting for Macola, and our intention is to share with you as much information as we can to allow you to make an intelligent decision. So, the kinds of things that we're going to be covering, I'll touch on in a minute, but just as a way of introduction, the Ativo Group is a Macola reseller organization and developer, and a provider of cloud hosting services. We've been doing this since 1992, and my name is Len Rio. My passion is in process improvement, gaining efficiencies in manufacturing, distribution, and service companies, and it's the real reason why we got into the cloud computing business as well, because cloud computing is one of those process improvements that really, I think you'll see once we're through here. So today, you can expect to learn a number of things. First of all, we have to clear up some of the basics of cloud computing, so we all have a common vocabulary and we understand differences. As with everything IT, there's a lot of alphabet soup that'll be thrown around, and you want to be informed as to what people are talking about when they're sort of throwing these terms around in conversation. Everyone is concerned about security. We'll touch on that. The benefits of cloud computing are something we'll spend some time on. The decision is quite often one of timing. So we'll talk about the right time to move to cloud hosting. Over the years, we've also earned the merit badges and the stars to understand the unique Macola cloud hosting issues. I'll share many of those with you as well. Show you the actual application on our cloud in action, and see if we can't help you to make your decision. We'll give you some tools and concepts. So, some of the basics. So, you hear this term cloud computing. What really are we talking about? So, cloud computing is anything that you do on the internet. So, if you use email like Gmail in your personal life, you already use cloud computing. And the software you're using to access these applications is all hosted online, and you access them via a login and a password from a web browser. Online banking, another really good example of cloud computing. Essentially, any software that you access while connected to the internet is an example of cloud computing. So where is this cloud anyway? Yeah, this is funny when I ask people, so where is the cloud? I catch people pointing up. It really is interesting that we have so much lack of information out there. But even though cloud-hosted software is accessed online, which we kind of think about as in the air, all cloud computing applications are hosted at a physical location in a building. And data centers, where cloud hosting is provided from, they're essentially highly controlled and secured warehouses with rows and rows of servers. And these servers can house anything from the website that you use to read the morning paper or the software that you need to run your quarterly financial reports. So they're climate controlled, they have backup generators that can keep them online for several weeks in the event of a natural disaster or massive power outage. Several layers of security, both virtual and physical, are at these sites to keep the information that they are storing safe. Another interesting question that I get is does bad weather affect cloud performance? And there was actually a survey done of just a bunch of random people on the street about cloud computing, and a disturbing number, like 51%, believe that bad weather has an adverse effect on cloud computing. So to be clear, the lights don't go dim when it rains outside, and neither is the cloud impacted by adverse weather. You might ask, well, how is the cloud different than my own server room down the hall? Well, the truth is, it's not very different at all. It's just down the street or across the state or across the globe instead of down the hall. So the blue network cable that runs outside the building to a utility pole or a buried cable is the same kind of blue cable. I'm talking about the one that sticks in the back of your computer instead of going up through the ceiling. It's as simple as that. The actual data center is a bit different than your own server room, which we'll cover in a few minutes. A couple of other pieces of jargon that I think are important to understand. There's different types of cloud software. First of all, there's the traditional purchased software. This is the software, the Macola software or Weiss's or whatever it is that you might be running that you currently own. And that you would then, you purchase that software and then you typically install that on your server and network computers. So instead, in the cloud, that software is installed on a remote server that you can access from an internet browser. But it's the same traditional purchased software. Then there's software as a service, or SaaS as it's referred to. These applications are made exclusively available through the internet. There is no disk or program that you can download onto your servers. So if you've ever used like Google Docs, this is a perfect example of a SaaS product. Another example is Salesforce.com or NetSuite, a competing ERP application that is hosted completely online and is not available for you to download. Then there's subscription software. So it's kind of a blend of the two, where like with Macola 10, you can now purchase Macola 10 licenses if you were buying them new as either a traditional or perpetual purchase, as we call it, where you just pay annual maintenance, or you can actually enter into a contract to subscribe to that license with Exact Macola, and then you pay a monthly fee for its use, kind of like leasing it, if you will, but you still get to download that software and put it anywhere you want on your own on-premise servers or in a hosted data center on those network servers. So it's the same license, but it's a different payment model, if you will. Then there's a hybrid model. A good example of a hybrid model is where your overall system is a combination of software applications, like Macola hosted in the cloud, which accesses another cloud service such as the Avalara AvaTax system for adding the right sales tax on customer orders, or using Macola and the eBiz for Macola credit card integration, where several clouds are being accessed to complete a sales transaction via credit card. So that's kind of a combination of hybrid licenses, if you will, all operating in the cloud. So which is Macola? Well, first of all, Macola, even with Macola 10, it is still a client-server application, meaning there's applications that are loaded on a server, and then there's applications that are loaded on a workstation. There are many browser screens, like with Synergy or within Macola 10, but there are also still many client-server screens. So for cloud hosting purposes, it doesn't matter which type of licensing model that you use. Your traditional on-premise Macola ERP system, whichever version, can be transitioned to a cloud-based application. There's the next question is the different types of cloud hosting. We just covered the different kinds of cloud software. Now let's talk about the different types of cloud hosting. So again, there's software as a service, like Salesforce.com, where you pay one fee per month to Salesforce for use of their software and delivery from their cloud. Now, those applications, those are the type that you cannot download the software to your own on-premise servers, if you recall. There's a difference, though, with software as a service in that it is what we call a multi-tenant environment. What that means is that even though you have your own database and the company down the street has their own Salesforce database, and someone in China has their own database. Everyone is accessing the same set of software, the same code set. So there's a sharing of resources there by multiple companies, multiple subscribing companies. Now, SaaS providers like Salesforce.com dictate when they will be updating their software to the next release. You have no control of that. Everything is managed for you in that environment. Then there's co-location. You may have heard this. This is not moving in with someone that you may want to marry in the future. This is where you bring your own servers and other hardware to a data center and pay them a monthly fee to use their air-conditioned space, their server racks, their power, their internet access, and so forth. However, you are responsible for providing your own server and database licensing, and when your hardware reaches the end of life, you are responsible for buying new hardware and replacing it yourself. You are also responsible for all management of those servers. So the data center there is just providing the building, if you will, and the utilities. You're providing everything else. Then there's something called the public cloud. Now, public cloud hosting, such as Amazon Web Services is one of the biggest ones, provides you with infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, as it's called. Now, although there's a pretty wide menu of what you can buy there, they provide the hardware, replace it when necessary, and you provide the services that are required. So basically, you're getting not only the building, but now the actual hardware, and then you provide everything else. Then there's private cloud. Now, private cloud hosting is what the Attivo Dedicated Cloud service is all about. So we provide a set of servers that are dedicated to your company, the server software licensing required, that's Windows Server and SQL Server, installation of the software applications, that's the Macola, Synergy, Wysis, Link, Crystal, we don't care, all of it. So, and optimize the performance of those applications for you, and then provide all the care, feeding, and support of the servers to ensure the optimal delivery of those systems. We manage all of the backups, I'm referring to data backups. They're kept on a 30-day schedule, and all of the servers and other hardware, even the versions of Windows Server and SQL Server, they're replaced on a regular schedule to ensure maximum performance. So I think a very important topic is to understand when considering cloud computing is who does what. I think we're all comfortable with the on-premise model where you either have your own internal people who are managing all that hardware and IT stuff, or maybe you have a subcontracted third party outside service who takes care of that for you. So first of all, there's three different pieces to the puzzle here that we need to talk about. There's the cloud services themselves. So Attivo and our data center partner, CloudTrek, provide 24/7 support to ensure that your servers are up and running. This includes the server monitoring, regularly updating the servers from Microsoft security and other patches that have to be downloaded and installed, and making sure that there's adequate disk space, RAM, and other system resources to support your particular usage of those servers. This service carries a 99% uptime guarantee, and we work with you to schedule any maintenance windows when it will be okay to perform system maintenance where a server needs to be taken offline to perform service. Whenever one of those security patches, for instance, is issued by Microsoft, it requires a server reboot, and those are the kind of maintenance windows that we need to coordinate with you. Now, these cloud services are considered delivered to you when it reaches your firewall. your firewall is what we refer to as the demarcation point for the cloud service, and the point at which your internal network and hardware support takes over. So let's talk about the second component. It's your responsibility to provide support for all of your internal local area network requirements, starting with your firewall. So all network equipment such as switches, printers, network cabling, local workstations, all of that is your responsibility to support with either internal or outside network support resources. So our pricing and whatnot does not include any of that, and that's not our forte. We will need the support and assistance of your IT resources as we're setting up your cloud server, your servers, to make sure there's no limitations or issues when we first install the service. Then there's application support. Now, the Attivo group knows the applications that you use extremely well, and that's what sets us apart from other cloud providers. We know these applications inside and out and how to install them properly on the server and keep them communicating and so on. But support for any of the applications such as your Macola system, Synergy, Event Manager, WISES, whatever you've got installed, once installed on your cloud servers and it's determined that you can connect properly, print documents, and so on, all of that is then covered by your reseller or through Exact Direct support, however you purchase application support. We're very happy to assist those resources if there's ever any server issue, any kind of internal communication issue. We're a highly collaborative group, but the cloud contract does not include application technical support. So you need to have a separate support agreement in place for your applications. So let's talk a little bit about one of the most frequently asked questions and one of the biggest concerns that should be on your mind: cloud security. So the security of a cloud-hosted platform in a public certified data center far exceeds what an average small or mid-sized company can achieve with their own internal IT infrastructure. Your data and software is stored in the data center with the absolute best-in-breed firewall, internet protection, antivirus, all of that. It's absolute best-in-breed. There's also 24/7 on-site security, real persons watching out over the entire facility, and trying to replicate the level of security that you're going to understand here in a second with on-premise servers would be very, very cost prohibitive. So as you can see, there's quite a few things that we've kind of put on this slide that identify the kinds of steps that we go through to make sure that there's uninterrupted service provided to you. But I want to call your attention to the one in the very bottom right, the one that has all the alphabet soup on it, SSAE 16 SOC Type 2 and SOC 3 SAS 70 Type 2 security certifications. That's a mouthful, but that indicates the AICPA, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, auditing standards for a data center that supports financial transactions. And our data center is certified to those audit standards. So besides the Pentagon, this would be the most stringent security requirements and standards that could possibly be required. These standards apply to all servers within that data center. You can't have exceptions. So that would mean that your servers would be certified to this level of auditing standard. There's a regularly scheduled audit. It's typically every 6 months or yearly of the data center by a major CPA firm who is qualified to do that certification. And the results of that audit can be made available to you on request. You may need that for your own internal auditors or external auditors so that they can kind of just check off the whole IT security piece of the puzzle. So that periodic audit they have to pass in order to keep those security certifications and keep the customers that require those certifications as part of their agreement with the data center. Now, a little bit about the benefits. First of all, the cost benefit. The most immediate and obvious way that cloud hosting is more cost-effective than hosting in-house is the ability to eliminate the need to invest in new servers every 3 to 5 years. So in addition to completely erasing that recurring expense, the cost to manage that hardware is also eliminated. We have an Excel-based return on investment calculator that we can provide to you, that you can plug in your own numbers and see for yourself. We'll come back to costs towards the end of the presentation here. The other thing that happens with cloud computing is that whole cost section of your profit and loss statement switches to operating expense from capital expense. So everything is done on a monthly recurring cost basis. You're billed monthly for whatever it is that you use that month on the number of users that were connected to the system, as compared to having to make that capital expense request to replace those servers or those firewalls or whatever it is that you need to replace. Something that really comes up a lot is, what about my IT people? Well, when you consider cloud computing, first of all, they don't have to go away. The best case scenario is that that IT department becomes your IS department. Instead of information technology, it becomes information systems, which allows your current IT people, if they're willing, to focus on other issues, such as improving the overall productivity of your entire company by better use of the systems that you already have in place. Or you may choose to simply reduce the IT staff, or definitely reduce the outside IT service costs. The cloud definitely provides you flexibility in terms of increasing and decreasing users. You can grow very rapidly. Since you can add users, it only takes us about an hour to provision a new user and provide them with a username and password, and they're in. And even if you have to increase data storage, we can do that pretty much overnight for you. It doesn't require you purchasing higher-end servers or storage devices. And if you have a seasonal business, you can ramp users up, pay for them while you need them, and then decrease the number of users and pay less during the slow season. Development and test servers is a big deal for me, because we've been doing updates to customer systems for a lot of years. And what I hate to see is rolling updates into a production environment and hoping for the best. Updates to systems or testing new applications should never take place in a production environment. This is a huge issue, for example, if you are an FDA compliant company. You have to have a system protocol in place to certify that you are going to get the expected results. So with the Ativo dedicated cloud, when it's time to do an update, we can quickly replicate your production environment as a development or staging system, apply those updates for you, allow you to run through a test protocol and certify the performance, and then we can roll the updates into your production environment, keeping you in compliance and minimizing any fallout from updates. It's also helpful to have those kinds of servers available if you're considering a significant add-on to your system or anything where you want to test the outcome. Let's not do that in the production environment. Accessibility, especially for remote users or where you have multiple facilities. Mobile users is really facilitated by a dedicated cloud environment. All you need really to connect to this environment is an internet connection, period. And it's blind to any kind of device. Could be an iPad, could be a Mac, could be a cell phone, could be a laptop, PC, or tablet. We don't care. If you've got a browser, a compatible browser with Macola, obviously, and that's most of them, you can connect to this system. And because of the enhanced security of this system provided by this cloud solution, you can work in a secure manner from anywhere. Even like an internet cafe, where quite often, a lot of private information is stolen. So, and the internet speed, and both the up and down speed provided by the data center is extremely fast with multiple internet providers for redundancy. Replicating that speed of delivery of the service is very expensive to replicate in most private settings. And lastly, as we come upon the hurricane season again, let's not forget about disaster recovery. So natural disasters and accidents, like the pipes that burst upstairs that now flooded your server room, are a fact of life. By keeping your data and software hosted in a secure data center, it ensures its safety. So cloud hosting facilities are far more prepared to deal with disasters, but redundancy is the first line of defense in every one of these facilities. What redundancy means is every single component of your dedicated cloud system has a redundant system operating for the purpose of failover in the event something stops. So there's two firewalls. There's always two power supplies. There's always a mirror image of that server that is ready to take over should there be some kind of a drive failure or some other failure on the primary server. Also, servers are replicated in their entirety and held in secondary storage, in addition to scheduled backups. Also, for a small additional charge, and some of our customers require this just because of their policy, we can also maintain a complete replication of your system at a separate data center. And we do that in a data center that's in a building that the Bank of America uses for its precious metals. It happens to be in Los Angeles. The building is certified to a 9.6 earthquake. And I don't want to be in a 9.6 earthquake, but this building is supposed to remain intact, and that's where that backup data center lives. All right, so now that we know a lot about cloud computing, how do you know if your business is ready for the cloud? First of all, one of the best litmus tests is it time for new servers? I still shake my head when, hold on one second, we're not moving there we go. When I run into prospects, and still have some customers, unfortunately, that are still running Windows Server 2003 and Windows XP workstations. Now, just because Microsoft stopped releasing security patches 2 years ago, maybe it's 3, what's the big deal, right? Yeah, you'll never get hit by ransomware. It can't happen to me. These servers have been out of warranty for 12 years, but those won't break either. So, I honestly don't, we wouldn't drive our car down the freeway like that, but yet we trust our business to some of this kind of equipment. So, bottom line is, as your servers begin to reach their end of life or their expiration date, and believe me, Microsoft has advice on that. It's 3 to 5 years, not 12. Moving to the cloud becomes a very realistic option for you because of the immediate ROI. I don't have to lay out 40 grand to replace all these servers and tape backup and versions of Windows Server and everything else. Now, on the flip side, if your company has just upgraded all your IT infrastructure and invested in new servers, it's probably more prudent to try and get some return out of that investment before shifting to the cloud. unless, of course, there's some kind of other reason, such as a major acquisition of your company or by your company, or some other game-changing event has occurred, like your board of directors stepped in and said, you will move everything to the cloud. Second consideration is, how's your internet connection? If you're out in the middle of the Iowa cornfields somewhere and internet connection is shaky at best, it could become problematic. But in most urban areas, the availability of broadband internet is very common now. So, but keep in mind that, I just want to come back to this, your cloud solution is only as good as your internet connection. So it's important also to not only make sure that you have a fast enough internet connection at your place of business to allow your employees to work without interruption, right? But also you need to make sure that you have a redundant internet connection in place if constant connection is a necessity for your business. Most of the time it isn't. If the internet went down for a flash, it wouldn't really matter. In terms of internet speed, it's recommended that as a bare minimum, you'll need the equivalent of a T1 connection. Now that should be available most everywhere, even via copper wire today. Ideal connection is 10 megabits or faster, and you may need more if you also have a VoIP phone system that's going to be sharing that same internet connection, because VoIP systems give priority to voice over data traffic. So bottom line is we just have to talk about that and make sure it's adequate. We can even test it to make sure that it'll work properly for you, but it's a consideration. Tired of the IT stuff? I hear this a lot. A lot of times it's smaller companies who really don't want to deal with it because they just don't have time, or they have really good motivation, like their board of directors told them to move their stuff to the cloud. But the clients that fall in this category just wanted to get out of the IT business. No server headaches, no backups, no compliance issues, no more. We need to spend 40 grand on new server equipment, none of that. And lastly, I forgot to put that on the slide, but for Macola companies, a good time to move to the cloud is when you're upgrading to Macola 10. Bottom line is you're going to need more servers to run Macola 10, and this might be a really good time to do the initial transfer and upgrade to Macola 10 and train on the cloud, and when you're ready, just switch over to the live database and we're there. So a couple of other Macola issues that we need to talk about. First of all, there's a single tenant restriction that we have to consider. And what that means is you have to have your own dedicated servers, period. There is no sharing of servers possible with the Macola solution. First of all, it's a license violation on behalf of Exact Software. Secondly, it's just not technically possible. There are some limitations. I can go into all that detail if you want to hear it. So bottom line is this makes hosting Macola just a little more expensive, but a lot more secure. Crystal reports printing, it can be an issue if the reports are really large. There's a technical reason why that happens in terms of a delay in the report starting to print, but we at TiVo have developed a solution to manage the speed of large print jobs with a printing utility, and that print utility is included in the cost of the service. Keep in mind, as I mentioned before, Macola still has many client server screens, so we need to use a terminal server where that client can be loaded. Now, we do not permit a direct RDP, remote desktop protocol connection, and that's really because of security purposes. It has to do with the ports and all this other stuff. So we provide you access to your end users through the Microsoft RD Web browser interface. And that is what launches the application right from there. We also need the most current software versions. The reason for this is we can only deploy these systems on the latest versions, or the latest supported versions, I should say, of Windows Server and Microsoft SQL Server. So this maximizes security for you and standardizes support for us. This requirement applies not only to your version of Macola, but also third-party add-ons. So as an example, installing compiled Crystal reports from Crystal version 7, for example, is not supported. Integration on the cloud servers. So having done this for a number of years, we've learned how to make all of the various applications that Macola users accumulate, WISES and BirdDog and you name it. We've engineered those systems to be installed in a way that make them play together properly and optimize the performance. That took a few tries before we got it right. And server resources, we monitor your server resource usage. We monitor it for the first couple of months to see your usage patterns, because the same two companies with the same number of users could require a completely different profile of number of CPUs and amount of RAM, and we get that optimized for you. So what do you get with the Attivo dedicated cloud in terms of servers? Well, a typical installation from Macola is a combination of these are all separate servers, they're virtualized servers, a domain controller where all the Active Directory and authentication goes on, a terminal server, and that supports the user access via the RD web interface. We may need more than one terminal server if you have a lot of users, and we utilize the load balancing features built into the Microsoft Terminal Server system. We provide a separate SQL server, that's for the SQL database, and also where you may choose to have a shared drive, a file server, to store loose files. With this solution, you probably don't need any servers on site at all. I know here at Attivo, we used to have 25 servers or something for all the purposes we used to support. Now we have 0 servers in our office. Essentially just a router, and that's it. Quite often, we'll need an IIS server, by the way, if Synergy is involved, and certainly for Macola 10, which is part of that solution. And if you're using the WISES wireless applications, we need a separate terminal server so that the handheld applications can communicate through the access point to a dedicated terminal server for its communication to the SQL database. Let's take a quick peek at how it works, just so we can get our arms around it. So basically, I've already kind of logged on. Whoops, that's not it. And that out of the way. Okay, so this is our live system, and we're hosting our own Macola 10 solution. I'm actually going to jump over to a demo environment and log on to it. I've already authenticated, so I don't need to enter my username and password. And this is a workspace. I'm going to jump over to, say, Core ERP, and one of the client server screens like chart of accounts, and you drill into whatever that might be, and you can see that it's a pretty fast response time. A lot of this has to do with the fact that, number one, we've optimized the amount of resources that are necessary, and secondly, our data center, the CloudTrek data center, is using all solid-state drives. So solid-state drives are lightning fast, way faster than 10,000 or 15K traditional mechanical hard drives. So running reports or accessing applications like you saw, or even doing things like MRP regeneration is incredibly fast. So we're very happy with the performance, and our current clients are kind of over the moon with what they've been able to achieve. So here's how I suggest you go about making your decision. Let's talk about what your requirements are, and we'll give you a cost proposal. We'll also give you a copy of the ROI, the Excel ROI calculator. You can plug your numbers in and basically do it as conservatively as you want. And I think you're going to be very surprised at the cost differential of cloud computing when you consider all of the add-in kind of costs. Don't overlook the tape backup system, the antivirus, all that stuff that has to be paid for that you no longer have to pay for because it's all part of the solution. If you're happy with that, send us your data, and we'll install it on your version of Macola, whether that's Progression, Macola ES, or Macola 10, and let you try it free for 30 days. This will be a test environment, but you can see the performance. You can see how things print. We can, install whatever it is that needs to be installed to satisfy you that, hey, this thing works. Certainly, we can provide references for you as well, so you can talk to people who have a similar kind of technology stack and number of users and that kind of thing. And then you can make a go, no-go decision, at which point we basically get all your users set up and make sure everybody is printing and accessing the system properly. And at that point, we'd make the final cutover with your then live current database. So you're probably wondering, what does all this cost? Well, the cost is quoted as a per user per month charge. The price ranges, though. Remember, these are dedicated server resources and SQL Server licensing and so on. So the more users there are, the lower the cost. So the price will range anywhere from a low of $65 per user to a high of $90 per user. So it just depends on the number of users. It's billed monthly, and we require an upfront fee of $18.50, and that covers the cost of deploying the servers, setting up the users, and installing Macola and other software and getting it running for you. So I think you'll find it very cost-effective when you actually compare apples and apples. It won't take long. We can provision the server and get the software installed typically in less than a week. We've actually turned it around in a couple of days. We'll want you to test the applications thoroughly before going live so that there's no disruption to your business, and then a final cutover to the cloud is then performed. So that concludes the formal part of this presentation. I wanted to leave some time for Q&A, and just kind of as my contact information and phone number is there on the bottom of the screen. I just wanted you to know that when you make a consideration to choose a hosting partner, there's going to be a very large benefit in choosing a hosting partner that knows your applications. The finger pointing is significantly or completely reduced. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions. And Tracy, I think we had a few questions come in over the chat, I saw.
Yes, we did actually have a couple questions coming from the chat feature. I'll read them out, and yeah, you can just answer them. First question was, if we have a subscription license plan for Macola, is there any difference with the cloud hosting that I need to know about?
Oh, no. No, I think we covered that a little bit, but just to emphasize that, that's just a licensing payment model. It does not affect the software. It's the same code as purchasing the software outright, so it does not matter one bit.
Okay, thank you. Second question that came in was, what is the initial term of the hosting agreement? How does it renew, and how do we cancel if necessary?
So the initial term of the hosting agreement is 2 years. There's a cancellation clause that allows you to give a 30-day notice as you approach that 2-year mark. And basically at the end of that time, the data is yours. You can have the data at any time, really. We don't care. And you can even have an on-premise backup server if you really wanted to. I'm digressing here. Bottom line is 2 years, and then just a 30-day notice that you intend to not renew. Simple as that.
Okay, great. The third question, if I need a new user added or one deleted because of a termination, how long does that take?
Typically about an hour. You know, we look at terminations and as something has to be done urgently, because ordinarily they're walking that person out the door and they want, you know, all access closed off, because there may be remote access capabilities. We want to make sure that that termination is finalized as quickly as possible. But typically within an hour we can get an add done. Just depends if we're already adding somebody for somebody else, or it could be done in 5 minutes. So it's pretty quick.
Awesome. Another one came in. I have an older version of Macola Progression. I think it is version 7.6.100 or something. Is that going to be a problem to run in the cloud?
Yeah, it is. We're going to have compatibility issues. So what we will want to do is coordinate an update to the latest version of Macola Progression SQL for you. By the way, we do not support btrieve because that's long past developer support. So we would install, I think it's 76900, or it may be 77100. Bottom line is we will get you updated to the latest version of the software so that we can remain compatible with the supported platforms of Macola. Now, in this case, would be Windows Server 2012 and probably Server 2014 or 2016. I'm not sure if it's supported yet, but whichever one that is.
Okay. And a last question that did come in. You mentioned that data backups are managed on a 30-day cycle. Can you elaborate on that a little more, please?
Oh, sure. So, first of all, we keep all backups for 30 days, and then they're dropping off after that. We can keep them longer. It's a small additional charge. It's not much at all. But what we're doing is we're doing a full backup of all of your data on a weekly basis, and then we're doing incremental backups in between those full backups. At any point, we're also taking snapshots of the entire server so that if we had to, we could replicate a server onto another physical server and have you up and running with the same access and everything else. So there's really two kinds of backups going on. One is data, and one is the actual image of the server itself. And they're on that same frequency. Incremental backups daily, complete backups weekly, retainage for 30 days as the standard retainage policy.
Okay, great. So I think that does look like that's all the questions we have.